So I have a question for everybody to make you think. I'm living in my mother's fantasy world. When she killed herself or drank herself to death or passed away of liver failure in 2011, she took any hope for me to have a life to her grave. So I've been forced for 25 years to live in a crazy woman's fantasy world because she was able to be my mother. I was a ward of the state, this older, very elderly grandmother age woman, and a father who made it very clear that he was not going to get involved even in the beginning, who is now in his 90s, decided to adopt me because they wanted a pet. Now, they made this very clear that they wanted a pet, not a child, but the mother already had 3 pets and 2 other foster kids, and now she wanted another pet. So that's where I came in the picture. Now, my mother's fantasy is getting me hurt till today, and it's really affecting my mental health. You can't live in somebody else's fantasy land forever and expect to hold your sanity. And what I mean by fantasy land, I'll explain. When I was a child, I used to just do normal stuff that child would do. Like, for instance, show my mother my accomplishments. So in my orphanage, I was the best treader of water. So they gave me a bronze medal and signed my initial ZG on the back. Gave it to me. I held on to it. Now, when I was getting adopted by this mother, I wanted to show her this medal. Now, this was after she's already epicacking me extra. She's ODing, doing crazy things. But anyways, I show her this medal because I want to hear a good job. Oh, great. My son is a good swimmer. Great to hear. But my mother, still to this day, I have to live in my mother's fantasy that she created at that age. At age 5 to 7, she created a fantasy that still to this day is true. According to every doctor, her fantasy is still true to this day. And what that was is my mother told all the doctors that I had attachment disorder because I was going around writing my old last name on medals. And that was an attack on her, she said. My mother said that her 5-year-old, 7-year-old son is writing his old name on stuff to get back at her. And that was just one of her fantasies. Then they asked, well, where this medal? They started asking me. I said I won this medal in the program, and the staff member wrote my initials on it. I don't know what my mother's talking about. I do not know what this crazy woman's talking about. She's lying. Of course, she gets mad and calls me a liar, tells me I'm a thief, tells the doctors that I lie and steal, tells the doctors that I have attachment disorder because I'm writing my name on everything. And on top of that, she goes to me, gets in my face, punishes me, and takes my medal away, and tells me that it can't be mine, it must be the African American kids. She continued this behavior over and over with different stuff. For instance, she gave me a bunch of pills, downers, right before my adoption. I got very drowsy, passed out in the car. I also passed out on a wooden bench in some courtroom or some place that had wooden benches and authority figures. But I don't know because all I remember is the grain of the wooden bench from being passed out, being so fucked up like on opiates. It felt like either like an overdose of Benadryl or a low dose of opiates for a child. And that's what my mother gave me. She did give me pills right before we left. She did absolutely give me pills right before she left. Now, I'm only 5, 6, 7 years old. I don't know if it's pill time. I don't know, but now as an adult, I know no, it wasn't. It wasn't pill time. These were none of the medications I was supposed to be taking. Then they bring me to a party, an adoption party. Now, I should be happy about this. I'm finally getting adopted. I finally have a home and a family, and I'm so damn happy. But something's wrong. All I want to do is curl up in the floor. I feel so tired. I feel so sick. I can't eat any cake. I didn't even want to eat any cake. I felt sick to my stomach. I just wanted to lay down. And then people at the party start coming up to me and going, what's wrong? Aren't you happy? Oh, well, what's wrong? Is this kid depressed? What's wrong? Was he happy? I don't know what's going on with him. Something's wrong. And then they start giving me evil looks at the age of 7 because my mother drugged me and gave me pills. And now I'm drowsy, looking for a place to fall asleep, not knowing what's going on. As a child, you don't know what's really going on. You don't know your mother is in fantasy land setting you up to have a lifetime of pain. You don't know the overdose at age 7 was really not an allergy attack like your mother. Oh, it's just allergies. Don't stop talking about it. You don't know that giving like a whole bottle of Epicac to a child is actually a crime. I didn't know that at age 7, but my father should have, my mother should have, all the people that heard her bragging about this should have. So these things cause permanent damage to my body as well. My stomach has never been good. You can go through doctor reports, you can go through pictures, starting in Westford at age 5, going on. It's not good. It gets worse and worse with the more and more people hurt me. Now, I am 31 and I'm over the abuse, but I need medical care. But every time I try to go get medical care, I get whipped in the face by my mother's fantasy. Whipped in the face. I have to live in my mother's fantasy that I have all these weird, made up mental illnesses. And there was so much drugs involved, and I was also being brainwashed. They would bring me to these expensive dinners. You have this disorder. You need to repeat this statement. You need to take these pills for life. This is this pill you're taking. You're taking it because you have this for life. If I report side effects, I'm told no. If I say I have hangovers, if I'm brought to the emergency room with a severe headache, migraine, and they give me Vicodin, it's so severe to counteract the other meds they're giving me. So they're giving me so many meds that my body's doing crazy things. I can't eat. I'm vomiting. I got headaches. I got brought to the emergency room, and the doctors give me Vicodin at the age of like 15. And then instead of looking into this, my mother goes into fantasy land again, and she starts popping my Vicodin in her closet. Then when I catch her, they turn it around as, oh, I'm some big drug addict. Well, let's discuss the health problems here. I've had health problems now. I'm at age 15, so 10 years. 10 years of very clear vomiting, losing weight, can't eat, sick to my stomach. The pills are affecting me. My mother's behaviors are affecting me. She's in fantasy land. She's acting crazy. She's blaming her alcohol abuse on me. She's drinking too much. She's pilling. And I'm watching all this as a child growing up. Meanwhile, she's bringing me the doctors and making false statements because they're feeding into her mental illness. They literally just gave this woman all different types of dangerous drugs and let her mess around with me like a pet. I'm not kidding, like Thorazine. My mother had control of Thorazine, Haldol. She had control of Xanax, Ritalin. She had control of Seroquel, Lamictal. Not just that. At one point, my nipples started to leak fluid. This was reported to my nephew, my nephew's stepmother, and my father all got a report. Do you think they took me off of it? No, they said that's fine. No, our son having milk out of his nipples is fine. You don't think that that's going to cause me some problems? And what was this medication for? What was it helping me with? Nothing. I wasn't even bipolar. My mother was giving me literal downers to make me down. Then I would go up naturally because I'm hyperactivity, and then I would go back down with more drugs. And then she would bring me and wipe my mind and say, okay, you got to tell the doctor you have bipolar. You got to tell the doctor you have bipolar. Here's some toys. We're going to buy you these toys, but you got to tell the doctor you have bipolar. We're going to bring you out to get pizza, but you got to tell your doctor you have bipolar and you need this medicine. Tell the doctor you're going up and down and up and down. And then she makes me up and down and up and down with drugs. This is my mother's fantasy. And then she passes away in 2011 by her own choices. And then all her fantasy I have to live in for the rest of my life. And now I literally have no rights as a human being. Like, watch. The landlord just, literally, I've been hurt for months. I've bled internally last year. I have a GI pain. I haven't been able to walk. I've been seeking doctor help. I've gone to the doctors for months. And on camera, my landlord just committed a hate crime. For one, he purposely kicked me where he knows I'm already injured. For two, he made statements that were against my disability, like he's calling me an addict, a disabled junkie, whatever. And this is right when he comes in the house, when I tried to just hand him a letter. I just kept my mouth shut and stayed calm. Then he tries to get money out of my roommate when my roommate's not supposed to, and he starts twisting him. Then on top of this, then he throws me on the ground and beats me because I hand him a piece of paper. Now, I don't force it in his hand. I don't force him to take it or nothing. I just say this is a legal, notarized piece of paper that I am handing you on camera on behalf of David. And then he grabs me, throws me on the ground, starts kicking me in the ribs, punching me, sliding me around. He even slid me where my head somehow got like in the hallway. I went from, fuck, it still hurt today. I can't walk great. There was a big red mark from his kicks. He actually landed kicks directly on the GI that was already injured. And he made statements that are clearly a hate crime. And he admitted to these crimes on the way out on camera, on audio. So you literally have the landlord assaulting somebody, making statements that consider it a hate crime. You got him admitting to the crime on camera. You got the whole thing videotaped. You got me on the floor holding a notarized letter saying, please take the letter, as I'm getting kicked. Do you think that I'm going to get help with this? Or do you think I'm going to get treated like a dog and thrown to the woods? I would bet you $100 that I'm in the woods 3 months from now trying to survive like an animal. All because I have to live in a mother's fantasy land and I just keep getting abused. I told you, you can kick me, you can beat me, you can do whatever you want, but I'm still not going to be undisabled. And they do it to me all the time. I've had cops beat me. I've had people take my canes away from me, my walking sticks. I've had people push me downstairs and push me down, thinking that I'm faking and I'm going to catch myself. People, I've had seizures and head injuries and been released to crawl back home for miles. I've been left on the side of the road. I've had landlords assault me. I've had people of authority assault me. And I mean, I said assault, not insult. I've had insults too. I've had verbal assaults, I've had physical assaults, I've had hate crimes towards me, and I've been disabled for 25 years. There is definitely something wrong with me, and anybody who says differently is a piece of shit liar who doesn't want to look at anything. That they're just basing that off of nothing. Because if you really want to do the research, if you look at the medical records starting at the beginning, it's very clear that something seriously is wrong with me. All you have to do is look. That's it. You don't have to listen to me at all, actually. If you just look, if you look at the black urine, if you look at the bleeding, if you look at the videos of people kicking me on the floor, if you look at the windows, if you look at the under the sink, if you look at the documents, if you look at the past records, if you look at pictures of me as a child, if you look at what states I lived in, if you look at my education, if you look how I graduated high school, if you look at what jobs I did, like working for 4 years with special needs children, if you look at how I work with other people, special needs adults, if you look at how I care about animals, if you look at how I look towards religion and how I hold my religious beliefs straight up, if you go through all this and look at it, it paints a very perfect picture of me. But see, they don't want to do that. They want to just relieve my mother's fantasy. It's one statement. Don't listen to them. Don't look. Just hurt them some more. And this is what doctors, landlords, basically everybody does as soon as they figure out that they can get away with it. But what would you do if you had to live in your mother's fantasy for 25 years, get physically assaulted, literally get held down and have drugs injected into you that make you sick? Not better. It's very clear from every report that I do not get better. I can't walk proper. I can't talk proper. I can't move. I have more learning disabilities. I can't write as well. So I do a lot better if I'm not under the influence of drugs. But I'm 31. I spent at age of 5 years old all the way to 24 on drugs. I don't know a single day where I did not feel like I was on drugs, of some type of drug. Thorazine, Xanax, Lamictal, an overdose at age 7, extra Ipecac, one drug or another was affecting me at any point in my life. I've been sober. I don't want a damn drug near me. Fuck that shit. Keep that shit away from me. And all you drunks stay away from me too. Because I know that's why the landlord keeps on having these hissy fits down and up the hallways, screaming at people that we don't even know what it's about. Some beer cans in the woods or something. I don't know what the hell that is. You can see it out the window. It looks like people went on the balcony upstairs and had a party and threw them in. But yet the landlord's screaming like a lunatic door to door, talking about he's going to assault people. Drunk. You could smell the booze on his breath. Now he assaults me at my own apartment. You think they did a breathalyzer on him? You think they took some blood to see if he was under the influence when he committed a hate crime? Do you think that they even care enough to really report this properly? Do you think that this town of Rochester is going to allow a disabled man to have a hate crime committed on him on camera and get beaten and poisoned for 8 years? Do you think that this is allowed or not allowed? Because I'll tell you, it's allowed. People are perfectly allowed to kick me on camera in the ribs just because I handed them a letter or tried to hand them a notarized letter. People are allowed to poison me and hold me down. Doctors are allowed to malpractice me. I go in there for a broken leg, and they literally drug me and give me drug tests. They'll give me some drug tests, give me some Ativan in the shoulder, and send me out. I have a broken leg. This is the treatment I get for the rest of my life. If I'm unconscious on the side of the road or something, I'm gonna get malpracticed. If I hand a note to somebody, they can beat the shit out of me. And people realize this. They realize that the system has failed me and they can do whatever they want to me. They can rape me, beat me, hurt me, kick me, whatever. Well, we'll see if it's true this time. We now have camera footage of a landlord committing a hate crime on a disabled tenant who he knows is injured and then purposely kicking him in those injured areas. You got doctors on maternity leave denying testing. You got me crawling across busy traffic to see primary cares, barely able to talk or move when I get there. You got me going to the Department of Health and Human Services. You got me going to Code Enforcement and Welfare. And they literally are just turning us down, turning us down, turning us down, or telling us to fill out paperwork, which we do, and then they tell us it's no good, not on time, whatever. Meanwhile, we get phone calls from other agencies telling us my Social Security paperwork wasn't filed on time. My cash benefits wasn't filed on time. And I wasn't the one that filed. They had it. They had it ready, but they purposely filed it at the wrong time. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe they just are like, oh, these people aren't worth it. 25 years of being systematically hurt, kicked in the ribs, beaten, abused, raped, living in the woods like an animal, years of that having to live in a mother's fantasy. Now let's let this continue a little further and see if this kid can hold his mental health even stronger. The only thing holding me together is Jesus at this point. If I give up my religious beliefs, I don't know if I would be able to stay mental after all this. I mean, people don't. Fuck all this bullshit on my file, too. That's not what's bothering me. I'm not depressed. I'm not depressed at all. I just want people to stop kicking me in the ribs. I want people to stop throwing me on the ground and beating me on camera. I want people to stop poisoning me. When I have a broken leg, I want to get treated for a broken leg. When I have a kidney infection, I want to get treated for a kidney infection. When I have a GI problem, I don't want to get treated for a GI problem. I don't want to be malpracticed all the time. I don't want to be beaten on the floor. I don't want to be walking out of a shelter and get raped. I don't want to have seizures in the woods. I don't want to have to drink to walk. I don't want to ever have to take Ativan from a dealer just so I can go to a job interview. And I've held off on 16 years of driving because of this disability I have, and they want to leave me in fantasy land. By the way, in this fantasy land that I'm living in of my mother's, I'm allowed to drive. I'm not even kidding. If I want to get my license today, I'm legally allowed to. As long as the state keeps me in my mother's fantasy land, for the last 15 years, I could drive at any time I wanted. Meanwhile, I really can't because people will get hurt. But because nobody will report my illness, I could literally drive today with little to no consequences, except for I would crash into somebody horribly. Because my feet and arms shake horribly, and I have something seriously wrong with me for 25 years that's preventing me from keeping my nervous system working. So I really shouldn't drive. But because these doctors want to continue to leave me in fantasy land, I can drive anytime I want. Now that's fucked up. Nobody with my disabilities should be on the road. They should have their disabilities looked at, documented, treated, and then be on the road, if possible. But instead, I've been left in fantasy land, so I can just go drive with a license. I can go do a bunch of stuff that I'm not supposed to be able to do. But yet, the stuff I can do, like I wanted to go work, and this guy sent me out to get a list of things for him from the hardware store. I can't even buy these little nail setters. I go to buy any like just random stuff that requires like a background check, and I fail at the age of 17. I go, why? Oh, suicide reports, psych reports. You have attachment disorder, bipolar, depression, suicide, homicidal tendencies. But none of that. What are these based on? Your mother's reports. Okay, but what visual proof? What actually happened? Other than me winning a swimming medal, or other than me trying to light a match for the first time, what really happened? Well, your mother says you were burning houses down, but I lit a match. That's it. I saw something glow I never saw before, and I tried to light a match, and I was 4 or 5 years old. That's it. But see, my mother gets these big fantasies that I was trying to burn houses down. Then she goes further with this. She keeps pushing this into me for years and years, pushing this, pushing these mental illnesses, trying to convince me I have them. Meanwhile, all I did was try to light a match, and I had a crazy mother twisting stuff around. All I did was try to show my mother a swimming medal, and she twists stuff around. It's crazy. All I did was eat a mushroom, and my mother poisoned me. All I did was want to watch Batman Mr. Freeze, and I got an overdose, and I never got to go in the ambulance. But yet that overdose is a mysteriously allergy to medications that appears out of nowhere. Oh, the medal? That's an attachment disorder. I'm a kleptomaniac, and I cannot tell the truth. And she repeats that for 15 years, all because I won a medal. These can affect people's mental illnesses if they're allowed to continue. You cannot allow somebody else's mental illness to be created into a fantasy and then expect a child to live in it and then become an adult and continue to live in it. This is how you break people. Now, I was broken and I am fixed. I want to work and help other people. I want to make sure stuff like this never happens to another person again. But if landlords are allowed to go kicking and beating disabled people and elderly people, literally yelling at them about all their disabilities as they kick them, literally on camera while you're trying to give them a letter that you're getting sick from one of his neglectful things. I mean, it was a notarized letter that said, in the last 8 years, we reported water coming in. We will not pay rent until you fix the water coming in the apartment. And then we got it notarized, and I didn't even tell him what was on the letter. He doesn't even know because he beat me before we got to tell him. I didn't want to have a conversation with the guy. He was already calling me names. And he just walked in the door, and I told him I wasn't paying him. I said, I'm not paying you. And then he started calling me a junkie and lots of names, getting real aggressive. I tried to hand him the letter. Then he tried to do a bunch of stuff to an old man, too. Try to clean him out of his money. After that note is notarized by David, too. David does not want to pay his rent. That note is notarized by him, too. And then after he was about to leave, I say, you need to get this legal notarized letter that's on camera on behalf of David. He grabs me, slams me to the ground, and starts beating the shit on me on camera. We have footage. It's been sent out to managers and people. If he gets away with this, it will break me. It will. If people are continued to get away with crimes because I have to live in my mother's fantasy land after I just keep on working and working and working and working. Keep in mind, I can't collect Social Security unless I say my mother's fantasy is real. If I say that my mother's fantasy is real and I choose to live in a fantasy that I know is false, I can get Social Security. But that would be dangerous for my mental health. It would be horrible. That's how you create a serial killer. No, I am not that stupid. I am not admitting to a lie and a manipulation or a fantasy. That would be mentally ill. Instead, I go over the real facts. This is what happened. I've had stomach issues. Yes, I'm always hyper. I'm always hyper. If I take downers, I go down. Certain medications do have effects and side effects in me. And if I'm in the woods scared and I might not live till morning, I do get a little depressed because I know I might die. I get really scared when I might die in the morning. Like if a guy got a knife to my chest, I get scared. I do. These are normal emotions. But see, when I was scared, that was a mental illness. Like if somebody was beating me and I was scared about the beating, well, I was mentally ill. If I was angry because somebody was lying about me and poisoning me, I was mentally ill. Don't forget, my mother spent 2 weeks blaming me for her own drinking. Made me cry for 2 weeks, and the only reason why I mention this one example is after 2 weeks of me crying and telling her to please stop, she finally stopped and admitted to, in this meeting with my DMH worker with my father, that yes, she was the one drinking the bottles in the basement, and yes, she was blaming me for her own fault. But I also had a recording of some of this stuff to bring to the worker. Sometimes I had to bluff that I had a recording just to show that my mother was full of shit. But none of this ever helped. I mean, did my DMH worker report my mother's drinking? Probably. Did my DMH worker report my mother's psychotic talk and behavior? Probably. Did my DMH worker report that I kept on saying my mother was lying about me? Probably. Did my DMH worker report how my shins were always cut up for bumping into stuff, and then my mother kept on calling it self-harming? Started telling doctors that I like to self-harm for years. This all started with the overdose and sucking on my skin and trying to figure out why my skin was different. That's where it started. At age 5, I started sucking on my skin after my mother OD'd me, and then she wanted to turn that into self-harming behavior. Meanwhile, yeah, you already harmed me. You gave me an overdose and refused to bring me to the hospital. I do not know what's wrong. At the age of 15, I'm playing tennis barefoot, and I can remove the skin from my feet. Nobody else will be able to play. Within one set, one game, one small 15 minutes, they would be off the court. But me, I continued all the way through the game because I really couldn't feel it until about a couple hours later it started to set in, and then the next day. And it was more deeper underneath that I was feeling, not the outer skin. But this was actually bleeding. My feet were bleeding and scabbed after. Nobody else can do this without feeling extreme pain. As a child, I didn't know what this meant. As an adult, it's neuropathy from an overdose. My mother gave me a bunch of drugs, OD'd me, and then did a bunch of more of this shit. So one of these ODs or one of these combos definitely hurt my nervous system and my brain went dead. My breathing slowed down. I probably didn't get enough oxygen to my brain. I wasn't brought to the emergency room and I was left there to die. When I woke up, my body was different. I was sucking and biting and trying to figure out what the hell is different. You know, if I touched this arm or licked it or whatever at the age of 2, it was different than at now. There's a big change in my body. Kids are trying to figure out what their bodies are. Me, my mother was doing all different types of horrible things to my body. And now as an adult, I have to live in her fantasy land, not get Social Security for it because I gotta tell the truth. I cannot lie. I'm not gonna lie. No, and I'm getting beat up for the truth too. I mean, literally, because I will not go along with the fantasy, and that would affect my mental health too. If I go along with my mother's fantasy, that would really screw up my mental health. It really would. You can't lie all the time. If I repeat my mother's lies, I won't even be able to remember all of them because they're not true. Winning a swimming medal isn't a mental illness, even though my mother stretched that out for months in the she tried to convince me that I had behaviors. She tried to alter my behaviors. And she did. She did a very good job of altering my behaviors. Now, as an adult, those are all my responsibility. The minute she died, I got control of my health care and my life. At 19, I had no control of what doctor I saw. I had no control of where I went. I had no control of where I could go. Literally, as my mother was dying in the hospital, I wasn't allowed to see her. I was locked in the house, not allowed to go out. I couldn't make it anywhere. They literally trapped me. My family made it so I couldn't drive. They made it so I couldn't do nothing. And if I believe in this fantasy, then I probably get nothing anyways, because I've already told the truth. I've already come clean with what my mother did to me, and I'm not going to be able to ever forget it. I'm not going to be able to ever forget it, but I can get better. There's no reason why I have to keep on getting hurt and people have to keep on screwing with my mental health just because they want to believe a dead woman's fantasy and feed into a mental illness. Because that's what these doctors are, too. They fed into my mother's mental illness. Absolutely. Not all doctors. Some doctors didn't like it. And my mother just went doctor shopping until she found one that would feed into her mental illness, give her dangerous drugs, and let her play with my body. Once when she found that doctor, she moved me again. Moved me, moved me, moved me. She would get records from one doctor, bring them to another, get records from that doctor, bring. She just kept on doing this in 5 different states. She just kept on bringing records from state to state to state to state to state to state that she was manipulating in the first place. When a doctor disagreed with her, it was wiped out. I was brought out of there. Never brought back again. No paperwork was established. But if they were writing down what my mother was saying, if they were feeding into her mental illness, oh yeah, all that paperwork got written down. especially by a Dr. Rosenblum. He was full of shit. He just fed into my mother's mental illness. Now, he was a good psychiatrist, but he did not listen to the child at all. He based all his care off of the parents. Every single thing that these people made as statements were based off of my parents. Keep in mind, too, I knew no history. I didn't know I lived in a tent. My mother told me all this stuff. My mother told me my mother was 15. My adopted mother was the one who told me what age and what my mother was. I didn't know anything. All I knew was I was born and I was growing up in a program called St. Anne's. That's the first memory I have, is growing up in St. Anne's, getting the Best Child of the Month award, winning a swimming medal, getting to see the Pope, getting a giant pile of toys on Christmas. This is what I remember. I don't remember anything mental other than hyperactivity. But then I meet this mother, and oh my God, this Patricia Newell, my mother, oh my freaking God, did she hurt me, and I'm still getting hurt today. Watch, that landlord who just committed a hate crime, an assault, abused their tenant, and I might be out of work even further due to my injuries that he caused. I won't get any justice for this. Watch, I'll have to live in the woods instead. They're going to finish me off. Watch. They're going to hurt me and finish me off some more. They always do. This is the pattern that I've seen through life. It's not something I'm guessing about. It's not something I'm trying to say is going to happen. It's something that's happened before, over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Somebody does something illegal to me, and they get away with it because my mother created a fantasy, and nobody will listen. Literally, if it's on camera, this one is clearly on camera for the world to see. All I do in the video is I stick my hand out and say that I have a notarized letter on the behalf of David. He grabs me on camera, throws me to the ground on camera, kicks me in the ribs on camera, kicks me in the belly on camera. Then you can see me on the ground with the paper in hand. All I got is a paper in my hand. I got my hand on my stomach trying to protect myself from injury. And then you got him walking down the stairs admitting that he's happy to abuse people. Now, this is all clear for the whole world to see. The mold, the holes, the waterfalls coming in the apartment is for the whole world to see. This is nothing compared to what was allowed to happen to me before my mother passed away. I had people beat me and then hold me down and inject random drugs into me. I had double doses of medication. I had my mother literally poison me on Halloween and poison me several times. I got beat with a ruler. I got literal jumpings under bridges by random strangers. I got raped in public. I literally been stabbed with somebody else's needle on camera and had nothing done about it. That's one of the many reasons why I think I might have caught Hep C. It was either from drugs, but not IV drugs. At the time when I found out I was positive for hepatitis, I was in a shelter, and the only times I ever really knew about a needle, I stepped on one in a trap house apartment, and somebody stabbed me one on accident in a shelter in the back on camera. On top of this, I did a snorted line of somebody else's dope that they kind of like did a weird saving thing with. It was dope in the same cooker. You know, it's a cooker they use more than once. So I don't know what that cooker was cleaned or what. So that was a bad decision. But it wasn't any bloody cooker or anything. So I just don't know. He might have been squirting stuff in, pulling it back out. I don't know. It was stupid of me. But I did a line of a pill. I say dope, but it was really just a pill. Perk. And now don't forget, I'm also age 19, 20. That's it. 19, 20. And I'm living in the woods and in the shelter. The shelter, they're not going so well. My paperwork isn't good enough for them. Some of these gang members are taking advantage of me. We got rapists trying to rape me. You got a needle getting poked into my back, I report. Then a guy tries to hold a piece of glass to me and an ambulance takes me out of there. And then while I'm in the ambulance, the guy's telling me I must be on drugs. He tries to grab a big tube and stick it down my throat. Meanwhile, there was no drugs. It was a piece of glass and an anxiety attack, and I was shaking. But see, I shake so bad from the anxiety and the 25-year pre-existing conditions, these EMTs always just want to fuck with me. So sometimes they put the tube down. And what was the report? Somebody held glass to me. That's it. Somebody held glass to me in the shelter, and I needed an ambulance because my heart was beating out of control and I'm shaking out of control. The ambulance people in the back wanted to make it a drug thing. My urine was spotless. Spotless urine once again. I have had so many clean urines, and they always, always waste my taxpayer dollars checking me for drugs. Meanwhile, I've told them over and over and over and over, here it is, straight for you. You want to know what's going on? Here's what's going on. If you don't want to listen to the truth, then don't hurt me at least. I mean, what's the first rule of the Hippocratic Oath? First, do no harm. Well, I can give you a list of at least 40 people who the first thing they did was harm me. That was the very first thing that the doctor did was cause harm to me. And I can prove this by just looking at pictures. Just look at a picture of me at age 7. I'll tell you what that's from. That's from medication abuse. Lots of it. Doctors first doing harm. They got a crazy, mentally ill mother who's showing signs of just nutsiness. You got a hyper child who's hyper off the walls, and the mother wants to slow this child down. And that's exactly what she did. She tried to slow me down by drugging me. It's that clear. And if anybody wants to know why I feel so in pain, why I fall down in public, why the landlord might be allowed to kick me in the ribs on camera just because I handed him a notarized piece of paper, or tried to hand him, it stayed in my hand the whole time. I just said, this is a legal notarized letter. We're not paying rent. I went to give it to him, and then he just grabbed me and started beating the shit out of me on camera. And this is all clear for the world to see. But nothing is probably, I mean, I should have a lawsuit. We got a hate crime involved. We got assault and battery on a tenant. If that isn't a lawsuit, if people aren't coming to help me, if the Department of Health and Human Services doesn't do anything, if the police department thinks that this is all right to allow the continue to me, I don't know if I can keep mentally stable. That's hard to have people grab you and just beat the shit out of you and have no protections under the law, even though it's clearly on your Ring camera for the whole world to see that a crime was committed against you. This is, I mean, yeah, any court would say that this is, boom, closed, open, shut case. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this one out. Now, my mother's bullshit and all that, that's going to take a lot of work, a lot more work. I put like 10 years into it as an adult or so, and as a, well, I should say more than 10 years. Yeah, more than 10 years. But I also, when I was a child, I was speaking up every minute I got. So there's plenty of documentation, pictures, there's plenty. Plus, my mother was doctor shopping. So if you just look at that, you can see 100 different doctors, and she's just bringing one paper to another doctor, and then that takes that paper to another doctor. And then she's also brainwashing me in the process, telling me, you need to say this, and you'll get a toy. Or we bring you out to eat. You got to take these medications because you got this, 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 and this. Not explaining to me why I have them. Just telling me to say these things to the doctor. Meanwhile, I don't know that downers make you tired. I don't know that fact. I didn't know that if you're given medicine downers and then you get really down right after the medicine and then you go back up after that medicine wears off, that's considered a side effect. If you're taking Thorazine, Seroquel, and you're taking all these meds and you're going down and up and down and up and you're taking Xanax during the day, if you're going Ritalin, Xanax, Seroquel, then you wait another 6-8 hours, then you got Thorazine, Seroquel, you got Remron, Lamictal, you got Trazodone, all as a cocktail at night. Then I wake up all drowsy, down, all fucked up. Then I start going up. Then I take the Ritalin and I start kind of going in the middle. Then I end up going back up, but then they give me downers and I go down. Then I end up just going like down for a while until those medications wear off. Then I go back up slowly. Then when I'm back up just about normal again, they give me a heavy dose that puts me down for about 12 to 14 hours. I spent 15 years of my childhood, all the way to age 19, doing this. And I was so brainwashed that I did it to myself from 19 to about 22 or so. I would walk in the doctors, tell them I can't sleep. I think I have, my mother told me that I had these things wrong with me. and then I would take the meds as I'm prescribed, and I would get sick. My mind would get foggy. I would get really bad from these medications. But that's because I shouldn't be taking these drugs. It was based off of lies and false statements. Doctors are only as good as the information you give them. My mother gave the worst information possible. She gave information to cover up a crime. That's not good information. And to this day, I'm getting killed slowly by other people's choices and actions because I have to live in my mother's fantasy, but I'm not willing to repeat it. I'm not willing to, no, I'm not going along with some bullshit that I know now as an adult is wrong. It's wrong to do this to a child. It's very, very wrong. I didn't know then, but as an adult, I know that this is full of shit, bullshit, wrong.